Today we'll be reviewing a hand played between Timofey Kuznetsov, better known as Trueteller, and Tan Xuan. In this hand, Trueteller will find himself with the nuts, where the critical decisions will revolve around constructing a strategy to extract max value.
But I haven't drank too much, I can tell you that. That's not the day we're fighting.
Huh?
Next time we're fighting.
Fighting?
Yeah, for alcohol. We will more.
You want to do that?
Yes.
I'll do that. We can play chess, and we have to do that. We'll both.
You play chess with me then.
It'll still be fair, actually. All right.
Let's play chess here.
You can play chess on TV.
I will bet on jungle on that one.
The action folds around to Trueteller in the big blind, and he calls with ace-10, and Tan Xuan checks in the straddle with king-deuce. With the ante and straddle in play, we see that the big blind is playing virtually 100% of its range given the odds. And to protect its calling range, which will be very weak, we see that the solver does a lot of checking, and very few combos are being played as pure raises, primarily just the strongest pocket pairs and suited aces. Similarly, in Tan's shoes, we see the solver doing quite a bit of checking throughout its range, though it is doing more raising with pocket pairs and both suited and unsuited aces, and a few stronger suited kings.
The alcohol
play
one?
lightning
Yeah,
chess.
let's put it here. Let's put the board.
We'll play lightning
together,
chess and
rather.
like some
I don't think I'd win.
make it.
If he's good at chess, he will crush me.
The flop comes ace-queen-9 with 2 diamonds, and Trueteller leads out with a 45% pot bet with his top pair. Interestingly, we see that the solver is checking nearly its entire range in this spot. This is likely in part due to the unique nature of the straddle ranges. If we rerun the sim using limped small blind versus big blind ranges from an 8 max game with an ante but without a straddle, we see that the solver shows much more aggression in Trueteller's shoes. Without the straddle, when the big blind is facing a pre-flop decision following a limped small blind, the solver is much more inclined to raise with its suited aces, queens, and nines, which in turn allows us to remove a number of these combos in the big blind's range post-flop after it simply calls. This in turn provides the small blind with a significant range advantage on this board in the non-straddle game, which prompts increased aggression. However, with the straddle ranges, the big blind retains most of its suited and unsuited ace, queen, and 9x combos, so with the small blind being out of position on this board, the solver prefers checking. I should note though that the EV difference between betting 45% pot and checking ace-10 are virtually the same.
You know, I'm as bad at
matter
chess
how
as
drunk he
I'm
is.
bad at poker. I'm a little bit worse at chess.
That
Yeah.
fucking suck.
But I went to chess
You
school
beat me.
in the Soviet Union.
How good are you?
Really bad.
All right, we can drink and
bad.
play chess.
I'm bad, but I still beat people sometimes.
I'm okay at
It's crazy.
drinking.
I'm really
Not good
bad,
at
but I
chess.
still
Almost
win.
like there's some luck
Like
in
maybe a
there.
little
In
bit.
Tan's shoes, we see that the solver is calling with most of its king highs, although it prefers calling when holding a diamond due to the backdoor flush draw. And this highlights why, from a GTO perspective, it is critical to always consider the overall width of villain's range before making any calling decision. For example, if this were a 3-bet scenario, king-deuce would be an easy fold because villain's range should be much more narrow and stronger. In other words, when the ranges are wider, all other things being equal, made hands and king and ace highs will generally be elevated in the equity distribution due to the greater number of weaker combinations in villain's range. As a result, here we see that the solver is calling with all made hands, all front door draws, and a number of backdoor draws as well.
No, no luck in chess.
In poker, yeah. I can only win in luck.
You would have to give me a win, right?
That'd probably be one of the worst decisions I ever made.
I'm so bad. I still want to play, and I can still play. So I still don't go broke. That's the coolest thing about it. You still have to beat me, you know? It's easy, but you still have to do it.
Doesn't look like it's easy.
Oh, I bought 1.25 million. Come on, I lost a huge amount.
How much you have on the table?
1.25 million.
No, how much you have on the table?
The turn is the ace of spades and Trueteller barrels, but this time ratchets up his sizing to nearly full pot. Here we see that the solver is predominantly betting this holding and that it is actually favoring an even larger 150% pot sizing. So why is this, and how do we determine the optimal sizing to extract max value? Well, this may be one of the most elusive questions to answer in GTO due to the incredibly complex mixing strategy the solver uses to maintain balance. As such, detecting discernible patterns in solver bet sizing, which can then be translated to first principles, is difficult if not impossible to do. However, having some type of framework to systematically determine bet sizing, even if ultimately flawed, can be helpful to organize our thoughts. So GTO Check uses a simplified 3-step system to approximate optimal bet sizing that is designed to maximize value. Step 1 is to identify the bet ceiling for the hero's hand, which tells us the maximum amount the hero in a vacuum should want to bet given the strength of his holding. So using GTO Check's mesoanalysis hand classes, generally speaking, nuttish hands have a high bet ceiling, such as full pot bets or overbets. Mid-strength hands have a medium bet ceiling, somewhere around half pot to 2/3 pot, and showdown hands have a low bet ceiling, somewhere around quarter pot to third pot. Step 2 is to determine if there are a significant number of combinations in villain's range that can call the applicable bet ceiling of hero's hand class. If so, the general recommendation will be to utilize that sizing to maximize value. However, if the villain doesn't have a significant number of combos that can call the hand class's bet ceiling, step 3 is to titrate down the bet size until the hero is able to identify a significant number of combinations in villain's range that can call that sizing. So in this case, step 1, Truth Teller's hand is very strong, particularly in a big blind versus straddle limped pot scenario. So trip aces on this board would be characterized as a nuttish hand with a very high bet ceiling of full pot or more. Step 2 is determining whether a significant number of combos in Tan's range can call a large bet. I think some in this spot at first glance may be hesitant to bet large or at all, since trip aces heavily block the ace-x combos in Tan's range. However, while that thinking may be more applicable in a 3-bet pot or a single raised pot scenario, in a big blind versus straddle limped pot where the ranges are extremely wide and comprised of many bluff possibilities, both players should generally be calling relatively wider as well, which means villain should be able to call a larger bet with a good portion of its range even without an ace. So in this specific scenario, since Truth Teller's bet ceiling is high, and there are a number of combos in Tan's range that should be able to call a large bet given the wide ranges, a large bet is justified, and we can skip the 3rd step of titrating down the sizing.
Pure. I don't think about the maths. Just play the hand.
Yeah, it's probably not
I like that. I should have quit when I had like 1.7. Huh?
Yes.
I should
That
have
would have been beautiful.
1.3, but I didn't.
You can quit now.
I don't quit. I'm the last guy to quit. I'm one of those. That's my biggest problem. I don't quit. Yesterday I quit 11.
You're a fighter, eh?
Wow, Tan
Nice.
Xuan calls twice with king too high.
Tan calls, whereas we see that the solver is predominantly folding this holding. However, we do see that the solver will do a lot of calling with other combos despite the scary board and the larger bet size. We see that all Queen X combos call, as well as a good portion of the stronger 9X combos and some of these weaker pocket pairs. We also see that the solver is calling with 100% of its flush draws and open-ended straight draws and most of its gut shots.
I need to be knocked out and dragged out.
Quad aces.
No, I love it. I'm not a fighter. I just love to play. Just love to play. Want to see. That's all. Every day.
Fighter makes me very tired.
I know, but you did a good job.
At 5 stops a year. Oh, gee.
No, but we need to make more and make it special. Let me help you. Make it huge. Make it Formula 1.
Forget about other commitments.
Let me help
Just
you. Let me do
focus.
like one tour where I can host it. Different.
Do like 8 Tritons a year, just half the year.
No,
Right,
just
Tritons.
one. Just slowly. Not fast. Nothing
Triton
fast.
poker in Lithuania, huh?
No, not Lithuania.
Very
No.
hard to get to.
No. We make it
Not harder than
no,
here.
no.
Not harder.
I don't think so.
No, it's much easier than here, of course. Much easier.
What are you saying?
No, it's not
Lithuania is
but
no harder to get to than
Yeah,
here.
more for charity, more for the
They
world.
apply direct U.S. to
Yeah,
Vilnius?
yeah, of course. Madagascar even now we have a direct flight. No, none. None that I know.
Timofey going for
They just
max
started-
value against a queen.
The river is the ace of hearts, giving Truth Teller quads, and he faces one of the most difficult strategic questions in poker. how to extract max value out of position when you have the effective nuts. Well, generally speaking, when we have a strong value hand, the null hypothesis should be to bet for value. However, before making any decision, we should always evaluate our alternative pathways and likely outcomes so we can rationally arrive at the best possible decision. For example, we should consider the possibility that tan may have one of the many draws on this board, or possibly a lower pair that may bluff when checked to, but would likely fold to a third barrel. Additionally, tan may have a queen x full house here that will bet when checked to and call when raised, whereas tan may just be inclined to simply call when facing a bet. On the other hand, there are a number of combos in tan's range, such as 9x or lower pocket pairs, that would likely simply check behind if checked to, given that two larger sized bets have already gone in on the flop and turn. So in that scenario, a check would likely lose True Teller's significant EV. Ultimately, in this spot, we should be weighing both the pros and cons of betting versus checking in the context of the board and tan's perceived range, and try to reason our way to the decision that we think will maximize EV. In this spot, from True Teller's perspective, given the wide ranges and tan's calls on both the flop and turn, it is likely that he will have a number of suited and offsuit queen x combos in his range that will call a bet, and therefore defaulting to the null hypothesis of betting for value makes sense with ace 10, and the solver agrees. Interestingly, we see that the solver actually prefers to check ace queen, which is likely because of its blocking properties to the most likely hand that tan should be calling a bet with, which is the queen x full house. In terms of sizing, we see that the solver actually prefers a larger 2x pot size. However, True Teller chooses the more moderate full pot sizing. So why is that? Well, going back to the GTO check bet sizing heuristic, in this case, True Teller has the effective nuts, so his bet ceiling is to shove, but as we can see, a shove will fold out the vast majority of tan's range, including a number of queen x full houses. Accordingly, we should proceed to the third step, which is to experiment with titrating down the bet sizing until we're able to identify a significant number of combos that are able to call the applicable bet. One way to abstractly think about this process is by conceptualizing the goal as maximizing the aggregate EV that can be achieved by multiplying the applicable bet size by the number of villains combos that can call such bet amount. I don't know what True Teller's specific thought process was here, but if I had to speculate, he may have titrated the size down to the maximum amount that he thought all queens and perhaps some 9x combos could call, and a full pot size bet seems about right. True Teller could also have a particular read on tan who seems to be a bit sticky, and so he may have sized his bet such that tan would also possibly call with some weaker pairs or even worse.
But not many, like...
That can't be a short flight either.
No, it's long. It's very long.
10 hours maybe?
No, it's less. No, it's Africa. It's the same as Mauritius, basically. It's like 11 hours. It's near. I didn't know it was Mauritius, Madagascar.
I've never been to Madagascar, and I don't think like I ever heard a person telling me that he was in Madagascar.
It's very interesting. You have to go there. It's very interesting.
I don't recall ever talking to anybody who's been to Madagascar.
You know it's in Madagascar, right? The jungle.
The jungle, of course. The jungle. The cartoons. The lion. The lion, right? The Lion King. It's from Madagascar.
Yeah, you're right.
Of course. They went with a balloon and they dropped there.
I want to go there.
We should go there. We should build your resort in Madagascar.
Wow, 10-20 calls of just king high, and
What's
it's
that?
not good.
Rob has been to Madagascar.
4 aces.
What?
Rob Fink have been
She
to
dealt 4
Madagascar.
Of course
aces.
he fucking...
Yes? Really? What the fuck was he doing in Madagascar?
So tan decides to make the ultimate hero call with king high, and interestingly, we do see that a number of king x combos are calling here, even over the 9x full house, possibly because the king blocks the small percentage of king-queen combos, which may have taken True Teller's line. However, we see that when the king does call, it generally does not prefer to call with the king of diamonds, as the diamond blocks some of the flush draws in True Teller's range. So in this hand, we witnessed a bit of a mini masterclass, compliments of True Teller, on how to extract max value. On each street, he made a calculated decision, likely based on the strength of his hand, the board, each player's ranges, and possibly some exploitative considerations as well. And from a meta perspective, we should keep in mind that winning a 380k pot with quad aces versus king high would not be possible in the first place if Truth Teller did not have a well-balanced playing style that includes not just large value bets, but also many large bluffs as well. So that's the video for today. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay balanced.